Hello, hello, hello there, everyone. It's Patricia Hayes here. Yes, it's me, new look and all. Ready for this week's Coffee Time Career Chat live. So let's make sure we're up and going here. La la la. Make sure we get going. There we go. There we are. How are you guys doing today? I am super excited about this week and getting things kicked off, so we will not belabor the point. For those of you who are joining for the very first time, once again, my name is Patricia Hayes. I'm an executive advisor, career empowerment coach, and authentic networking strategist. And we are here with our Coffee Time Career Chat, where we spend a little bit of time talking about some of the issues that are pressing for you all in your career and professional growth, your business growth, both as a person and as a leader. And I'm super excited, as I said, about this year. We are doing coffee chats a little bit differently. We're still doing our Monday live coffee chats, but on Wednesdays, we have flipped that to a recorded session that is focused on authentic networking. It is the networking edition on Wednesdays, and it gets posted at the exact same time, so around 10. And you can join in. I absolutely want to make sure and get your input on that as well. Because we have some things coming your way this year, and I look forward to sharing more of that news with you later. But for right now, we're still talking about pressing reset for this year and how, about getting a fresh start. And we're going to end this month on this reset and fresh start piece talking about leadership and defining learning to lead in 2021. And as we're going through that and thinking about it, we always want to make sure that we level set on how we're defining leadership, right? Remember, I do not take leadership as a positional term. It is not just about what position you have in an organization. That's not what leadership is about. That may be about authority or power, but leaders go beyond that. Leadership goes beyond just having a position of authority. Leadership is about influence, and it's about motivating and inspiring and guiding people along a path to achieve a common goal, and sometimes being willing to take a hit for it, right? Because true leaders do have to do that on occasion. So, that said, there's a couple of things, two or three things that I want to talk about when we're talking about learning to lead in 2021. And when I say learning, it may be relearning, it may be getting a little bit of a reset and a refresher, but for some people, it really and truly is about, learning for the first time. So we're gonna be able to cover this, and it should apply to just about everyone. All right, y'all know how I love my coffee. All right, okay. So the first point that I want to lay out for you is simply about learning to lead with fresh eyes. What do I mean by that? Well, there is tons and tons of content out there about leadership, right? Having content about leadership is not, there's no lack of it. Hey, Sarita, there's no lack of good content out there about leadership. There's also some bad content or some okay content. But having that content out there is not the issue. The issue, or should I say the warning and concern, is to not try to envelop everything, but rather to and not to allow old sayings and old ways of doing things to direct your new path. And again, there's some solid content out there. John Maxwell is one that comes to mind. It's been a solid source of good leadership direction and consistent over the years, and updating his content and all of that. But sometimes people get stuck in a rut, right? It's like you just, those cliche things. And that's really what I'm getting at here, is to move beyond the cliche and to look at things with a fresh set of eyes. So that means you have to be discerning about who you are right now and who you want to be as a leader. That's really, really important, because it will allow you to define leadership and how you grow as a leader in terms that are relevant for you right now, today. Again, when I say discerning, that means you have to whittle things down. You have to whittle away those things that you either have grown beyond, or maybe some things that you're not quite ready for yet. And that requires some discernment. That requires a bit of humility to say, I'm not quite there yet. So let me find the stuff, let me find the content, let me find the path that I'm on right now so that I can grow and develop in that way. The other thing is, when we're talking about making it real to you today, making this leadership journey real as to who you are right now, what's relevant in your, thanks, Sarita, what's relevant to you in the way that you're growing and the way in what you're doing right now and today. All right. And this is why I say, look to those old things as good foundation, perhaps, but don't get stuck. Don't get stuck there. Lead with fresh eyes. Be willing to push the envelope. Be willing to look beyond what's the obvious and what's in the comfort zone. All right? That, again, can be challenging for people, especially when you're first starting out. So that's why you have to do a little bit of journaling. You have to do a little bit of reflection to kind of figure out what it is I'm doing, where was I, where am I going, and how can I best get there, and to develop as a better leader, not just because of position you have, but because of the respect you've earned, because of the growth that you're experiencing, and the influence that you have. And we're going to talk a little bit more about influence in just a second. All right. So that's the first thing. Make sure you're leading with fresh eyes. Secondly, the second thing we want to make sure to do is you got to remember that leadership is about standing up and moving forward. Okay. It's not about just sitting in your comfort zone and having people come to you and, you rattling off your wisdom. That is not leadership. That is not leadership. You want to make sure that you are learning, to acknowledge that your learning and your studying only go so far. So that's really what we were talking about at the beginning, right? About learning and doing the studying and doing that background homework so that you can get a good sense of where you are and what path you want to be on. But at some point, action is required. You have to stand up for something. You have to move forward to accomplish something, to take some action. You do not want to let fear redirect your path or redirect you from your path. And that is easily done in today's world, because there's so much out there, right? There's so much that's I won't say guiding us, but so much that's out there to disrupt us, to take us off our game, because, to distract us. That's the word I'm looking for. And you want to make sure that on some things you got to keep a few blinders on, right? Because you don't want to get too distracted. You want to stay focused. You don't want to be taken off task just because someone said something negative or whatever, or someone criticized you. Guess what? That's part of the responsibilities. That's part of what leaders do. They take hits. I mentioned that earlier. This is not a popularity contest. All right. And so you have to make sure that you are willing and able to stand up and move forward as the need calls for it. All right. That action part, so important. If you're leading in an organization, if you're leading a group of volunteers for something, whatever it may be, it's the action piece that people are really looking forward to. That's really what, when people are looking for good leaders to help them in whatever way they can, they're looking for someone who can help guide them to take the action that they need to do, to move forward with whatever process, project, thing that it's needing to get accomplished, right? And that is super important. If you as a leader are not willing to take action, you have already failed your people. You've already failed those who are following you. You are already doing them a disservice. All right? So don't do people a disservice like that. And that means sometimes you have to shore up who you are. And you have to know how to step up and stand up even when you are not at your strongest, or where you're not at your, where you're not comfortable. But that doesn't mean that you're not willing, or that you don't take the stance that you need, that needs to be taken. That you're not willing to push the envelope, to ask the extra question, to to challenge a presumption, because that's what leaders do. Okay? So remember those two things. First, make sure we're leading with fresh eyes. Make sure that you're standing up and moving forward. Those are two very crucial things as we move forward into this new year. Now, point number 3, one of my favorite topics. I'm probably going to linger here just a moment. Let me make sure and see what kind of time we're working on. Okay, so here's the thing. As a leader, you have to be sure that you are monitoring your influence. Because remember, when we went back to it, we defined leadership as about being about influence, and how you influence others through it being inspirational, through being through motivating them, through guiding them, a whole host of things, right? Whether you're doing that within a position of authority or from behind, right? It does not matter. The influence is crucial. And if you as a leader are not monitoring your influence and how you're utilizing it and how it's directing people, that can be an area of concern down the road. You want to make sure that you are aware of how your influence is operating, how it's actually being perceived, and how you are utilizing it, right? You don't want to be abusive about it. You do want to manage it. You do want to steer it in a good direction, but there's so many ways that can go wrong, right? So here's the thing. First thing is you want to look at your influence on how do you want to be viewed as an influencer, okay? If you don't want to be perceived as some dictatorial type of person, control freak, breathe down her neck, saying, hey, I'm the boss, I'm in charge of this project, in this process, I really think you need to do X. If that's not how you want to be perceived, then don't act that way. That is not a good way to utilize your influence. In situations like that, perhaps the better way to go is to ask questions that will guide people to come to conclusions that may or may not agree with where you are, but it will help people learn how to think, how to process, and to appreciate that you are not dictating action to them, but rather leading them to come to conclusions on their own. Do you see the difference there? And the technique that was used is simply by asking questions. There are so many other things. You can pull people together to discuss things in a group. You can solicit anonymous input. I mean, there's just a whole host of ways to do it, other than being a dictator, other than being a control freak, right? So that means you want to be conscientious of how you are being viewed when you're utilizing your influence. The second thing there is you want to be aware of who you are influencing. This is very important. And here's the reason why. Because there are the obvious choices, right? the folks who are in the group, the folks who are your employees who work for you, the folks who work with you. Like those are the obvious where we can see, oh yeah, those are the people that if I say something, they're hearing or whatever. Here's the kicker. The kicker is those people you cannot see and you may not recognize how far your reach is. That means those people, if you have 5 people in the room, you are potentially influencing other people that connect through those 5 people. So if there are another 5 people beyond each one of those, that means your influence is not 5, it's 30. Because they're going to go share with those other people how you conducted yourself, whether you were inspirational to them or not, whether you motivated them to take action or not. If you work in an organization where there is a large structure, can you imagine how impactful that can be, both good and bad? That is how organizations come up with serious culture issues, is because the person at the top who's defined as the leader because of their position and how they act and how they're influencing others downstream, that just feeds into the whole thing. And whether you're down or above, it's the same concept. Okay, so you want to give some thought about who you are influencing and who do you want to. Because if by your actions what you're doing means that you're not influencing the people that you want to, then you're going to want to take a step back and reconsider what it is you're doing and how you're presenting yourself so that you can have the impact that you want to have on the right people. Okay? So consider who you want to influence. Then last but not least is the when and why your influence may be necessary. Just because there is an opportunity to say something, to do something, doesn't mean you should take it. And for some people, that is really hard, right? Because they're like, well, I know what I need to do or say. I mean, why aren't they doing this? Blah, 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 and go running off at the mouth. And then wonder why people are like super quiet or whatever. Because sometimes, for one thing, everyone's not ready to get straight to the point. I've learned that lesson the hard way a long time ago. And that was something that I had to learn how to sit back and control, not because I was trying to be bossy or whatever. It's like, for me, I'm very strategic in my thinking, so I was able to normally, and still to this day, to draw some conclusions much faster than my colleagues, and I could get to places faster, but they weren't there yet. So when I said it, it wasn't effective. So I've learned that if I want to be effective and in crafting people to get to a certain point, is that maybe I'm asking that question. Maybe I'm helping to say, hey, if there are some other things to be considered as we move down XYZ path, right? Guiding them to that. Or sometimes maybe it's just I say nothing and in hopes that people will get to a certain point where then it might be more appropriate for me to engage, for me to say something and to give some further context, some further influence or impact. Okay? Just because you know something doesn't mean that you know when it should be said or done. So that is, again, exercising some self-restraint, some humility. And what did they say about reading the room? That is really crucial. Sometimes you just need to sit back and watch how people are responding, listening, looking for those verbal cues. And we're doing this a lot online. And when people are, not engaging and, they've got a black screen and so you're not really knowing, reach out to them. Contact them by email, by text, or whatever. Hey, just checking in. Where are you on this? How are you doing? Okay, that's what leaders do. So that they can get a better idea of when it's time for them to step in and to give additional guidance, or why it might be necessary to give additional guidance. Because, for example, if people are feeling very discouraged or overwhelmed, they will not say anything, or they'll just pretend everything is hunky-dory. But if you don't ask those questions that we talked about earlier, or if you're not observant and taking a step back as opposed to just giving out orders or saying, well, I'm, Queen Bee and I know exactly what needs to happen, then you miss an opportunity to learn from others. And that's really what leadership is about. It's just not about imparting your own knowledge onto people, but it's actually about learning from people as well. I think I mentioned this a few weeks back in a situation, but in a different context. I was going through one of the leadership groups, and there was some content where there was a person who was clearly sounding very frustrated, okay? And they were upset because they had been moved from leading a group of colleagues that they clearly were very comfortable with, that were much more along their age group, it sounded like, and all of that. And there was no problem, right? They weren't being moved because there was a problem with that group, but they were moved to lead and take on managing, I'll use that word first, take on managing another group that was younger and very much, it seems like, along the millennial lines. They communicated differently, they had different expectations and all of this. And this person was really upset, and they were like, what do I need to do? Because it just seems like I'm being punished since I'm being, quote, forced to work with this group of people. And it was really interesting as I read through the content and reading through what some people said, which I do often before I make a comment myself. And then I did make the comment. I said, how about we view this from a different perspective? Number one, not that it was a punitive, but rather someone saw your potential as a leader to influence this younger group to achieve the goals that they need. Okay. And secondly, not just as an opportunity to tell this, quote, younger group of colleagues, and impart your wisdom to them, but what if it's also an opportunity for you to learn from them? So, because when you think about that, if you are someone who's put in a position like that, and you can work with this younger, millennial, upright, group coming up, and the older, you're now a bridge. Like, you have now made yourself very invaluable, very much a key player, because you're able to communicate both up and down and around. That's what leadership is about. Okay? So think about those situations that come along where you need to monitor your influence better and being aware of it as we proceed throughout this year. Okay? And I think that will provide so much growth and so much opportunity for so many of us. It'll be really interesting, I think, for you to be able to keep track and to keep an eye out and to look for that. So here's the thing. So if we're going back, we're talking about learning to lead in 2021. And we talked about, once we recognize what leadership really is about, it's about influence, it's about inspiring and motivating and guiding people to achieve their goals or an organization's goals. And when you're doing that, you need to remember to lead with fresh eyes. Do not fall for the cliches. Do not presume that the cliches are the way to go moving forward. Let's think about using them as a foundation, perhaps, and getting some solid things, but then doing a little bit more work to study more, to figure out what works best for you and what will work best for you moving forward as you try to grow as a leader and to be more impactful in the things and the situations that you're handling. Then secondly, you want to make sure that you're willing and able and ready to stand up and move forward, because leadership requires action. When you are motivating and inspiring or whatever, ultimately it's not just about being, a cheerleader It's about getting people to act. It's about getting people to take action. Okay. And I talked a little bit about the fact of it's not always a rah rah moment. It's not always about being a cheerleader. Sometimes we do have to make difficult decisions. We have to make unpopular decisions. But ultimately, in the long run, it will get people to where they want and need to be. Because sometimes what people want does not equal to what is actually needed. That's a conversation for another time. And then lastly, make sure that you monitor your influence as a leader throughout the course of the year. And when you're doing that, you want to make sure that you're being cognizant of how you're being viewed, of who you're actually influencing, and then when and why your influence may be necessary in a situation, in a project, when an opportunity comes up. So that's what I have for you today. Let's see. Do we have any questions out there? I know I kind of ran through that. Let me take a quick break and do a refresh. Because sometimes I can't always see what people are doing or what they are saying. So I'm going to check here quickly. Oh, there we go. Okay. Cool. All right. So if there are no questions, couple of different things. Number one, which is don't forget to check in for Coffee Time Career Chat on Wednesdays, the Authentic Networking Edition. Right here, 10 o'clock. That one is recorded, not live, and that will be ready for you. And then also some great opportunities that are coming up. We are definitely going to do our 30-day consistency challenge, and I'm going to get it launched next week. Not if it's the last thing I do, because it's not going to be the last thing I do, but I am definitely determined because I want to make sure and get one in for this first part of this quarter. And that is where we literally engage. It is one of my free challenges that I do about 3 or 4 times a year, where we literally decide, you take one thing that you're going to focus on for 30 days to make sure to work through our consistency issues. It's something I started about 3 years ago, at least, when I was having some issues trying to really stay on track with some business things. And so I just continued them, and I invite people to come along. Here is the exciting piece of that, is that this group of folks, you will get to beta test my new 30-day consistency challenge journal. Yes, it has been done. And so it is being finalized. And so I will share that with you. I will put out a link that will be helpful if you sign up, so that we can make sure that you can get access to it, okay? So I'm not just gonna float it out there. I'm gonna ask you to sign up for it to get access to it. You don't have to participate in the challenge. You can participate in the challenge without the journal, but I would really appreciate if you would do it, because I'm looking forward to being able to put this out and publish it officially. So I invite you to take part in the beta version. Then next, we are going to be working through a new version, or updated version, I should say, of my live workshop. That will be coming up in February as well. If you haven't watched before, I do these 5-day live workshops where we get down to the nitty-gritty on some things. And in previous times last year, I worked through a bunch of things around our careers, about focusing on our plans, addressing mindset issues and networking and leadership and all kinds of things. I'm going to narrow it down even more and focus really in closely on the whole networking piece for this 2021 start to the live workshop. So I'm super excited about that, because relationships. That's what we're really talking about. And I really want to focus in on that and hone in on that because I really think that people need that right now as we continue to work in this virtual environment. So you will be seeing that information coming out this week as well so that you can get signed up for it. I saw that Sarita is asking about how does one sign up? I will be putting out a link later on today, and you will be able to do that. So if you will hit me up in the messages and send me a private message saying, hey, I want to make sure I get access to that link, and that way I will be sure to send it to you, and you don't have to go hunting for it on the page. Okay? All right, that is it. So much more coming your way. I cannot wait to share it with you. But if you are someone you know is interested in working more closely, in a more private setting with needing some coaching, please hit me up in the messages. That is on the table as well right now. So I don't want to overdo with so many different things, but like I said, there's lots coming down the pike, and I want to make sure that you get caught up into it and that you don't miss out, okay? So if you have any questions about anything that I brought, make sure to hit me up in the messages. I will absolutely be willing to follow up with you, and I look forward to doing it, all right? Thank you for joining me for this episode of Coffee Time Career Chat, and I will check in with you later. Take care. Bye-bye.